Hey, I'm Jordan, and welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. As you heard in the intro, my guest today is Jordan, a regular contributor on the show. Jordan is an airsofter from the United States, for those of you who don't know. And he and his team, the Operators, recently attended Midsummer Nightmare 7, which is a Stag Ops event held in Vermont. Midsummer Nightmare is a 36-plus hour event that starts and ends at night, typically, providing players with more than just an airsoft game, but truly like an airsoft experience by utilizing highly skilled Stag Ops Red Team players as an opposing force, actors, and role players, and basically just creates this tense, challenging weekend of airsoft. Jordan's been on the show before talking about previous editions of this event that he's attended, but he's never been to this event as a full-on noodle boy. His first time running night vision devices for the game. So I'm super curious to hear about all of that, Jordan. So thanks again for being on, man. It's always great to have you.
Absolutely, Phil. I can't wait to get into it.
So at time of recording, it's been probably just over a week since this event took place, if I'm not mistaken, right?
A little less. That was just
less?
this past weekend. So
Okay.
On Sundays when we got back home, we finished on early Sunday morning. So.
Okay, and so good, so nice and fresh memories from this event.
Yep.
So what was the format of this event like? I think in the past it was sort of like you had like a fire base that you were defending. Like, what was the deal this time around?
Yep, so the same idea as the previous events. This was at the Historical Milsim Center in Jamaica, Vermont, which is based around a rock quarry, essentially, which happens to be an active rock quarry, as we found out over the years. Every time we go back, there's a little bit more land gone from our fire base because they're actively pulling stuff away. So the main idea was we are a outside contracted force coming in to secure, I believe it's the rare earth minerals from the Grem facility, which is guarded by the, I believe it's the Hambatu Armed Rebel Militia, HARM, short. I might have messed that up a bit. Maybe it's Hambutees, but something like that.
Gotcha.
The rebel militia of the area who wants to stop us from getting those minerals like they have tried in the previous years. So the main thing is get in, secure the fire base, and basically the entire event revolves around making sure that that base is defended whilst going out and doing other missions. So making sure you're shifting around squads to always have people on defense while also accomplishing outside of base missions.
Right. How many players attended this event? Because I mean, I know the red team is not really players, like they're not, paying members or what have you. So how many people were in your whole faction?
So I'll probably be a few numbers off. I will say this year they opened up the tickets slightly. So normally there was 40 plus the 5 cadre, and I believe this year it was 50 that they wanted plus the 5 cadre. We didn't fill it out in total. I think we were a few people short. So we had to switch up the way that the squads were working a bit because we weren't able to fully fill out the event, but they did raise the player cap this year to 10 more than normal, it seems. I think either 5 or 10. I'm pretty sure it's 10. And
if I recall correctly, like it's a pretty large play area. Like you're not trying to cram 50 people into like a postage stamp, right?
Oh no, it's a big place. The base itself is not, it's where you are is not gigantic. Like the base is probably like, let me make a comparison here. I'd probably say like the base is somewhere around half the size of where we were at Iron Horse for our spawn point. So like that big field area that we were, I'd say the main base where we like lived out of, like that was like built up with like fortifications and tents and stuff like that, was probably about half of that size. So not huge, but the woods around it and the rest of the environment around it was where everything was played. So it wasn't just we live in the base and that's it the entire weekend. There was a lot more to the field than just that outside of the base.
Right. And they do stuff with like props and stuff like that. So you're not just playing in this quarry, like it's made to look like certain things. Is that right? Like they're putting stuff in the field for you to interact with as well?
Yes. So at the quarry itself, this field is typically used for Vietnam reenactments. So they typically have like old school, like Vietnam style military tents that
Mhm.
are set up for like the command center and for the players to have like a place of refuge or to sleep in, like safe areas essentially inside the tents, which are as safe as you want them to be. I guess you could totally still catch like a spare BB into one of those tents without iPro on if you took your iPro off inside the tent or something like that.
Right.
But the area itself is like built up with like sandbags. There's like military like boxes, like storage areas. There's bunkers built up like all on the top of this fire base. So it's not like it's just an empty, you walk up and there's just a quarry and you're just at the
Mhm.
top of it. There's vehicles that are being used. This year again we used the Deuce and a Half, which is like this big huge truck essentially that we load our gear up onto, that brings out our sustainment gear so we don't have to ruck it up to the base, which is part of the game, is getting the base secured so that we can bring that truck in with all of our main supplies, because until we do that, we're not spawning in the base. We have to respawn at the beginning of the event at like the front gates, which is, I think, from top of the base to the gate, it's about, and back, it's like a mile and a half. So if you
Okay.
die and you don't have the base as a spawn, it's a hell of a walk to get all the way
Mhm.
back. And it's not flat. It's downhill, uphill, all over the place. So it's not empty by any means. There's, villages out in the woods. There's a downed plane. There's boats. We used boats this year, and I think they used boats last year and maybe the year before as well. Lots of things for us to use on the field.
So yeah, I mean that sounds, I mean, especially boats. Like I think I saw a picture that you shared on the Discord, which was I think Will was in front, and you can see his Foreign Legion patch like right at the front of the. I think it's
Yeah,
a
that was
rib that
Jeremy.
he's in.
Yeah,
Oh, Jeremy,
yeah, that was
yeah, yeah,
Jeremy. Yeah,
yeah.
Will was
So
right
cool.
behind him, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Jeremy was like in the front with his LMG, just like as they were coming up to the land. Yeah.
So this event started with you guys basically hauling all of your fighting kit and stuff like that, not your sustainment stuff, but like your fighting kit into that fob area, I guess, right?
Yes. So the first thing we do is we step off. So we loaded up the truck. Of course, that's all out of the way. Historically, this event has always started at dark or close to it. Most of the
Mhm.
time, we started after dark, and this year was no different. The woods are so thick there that as soon as the sun goes down, it is dark enough in the woods to use night vision. So it got dark really, really fast as soon as we stepped off. So our main thing was essentially take back the base or secure the base while avoiding the enemy patrols. That we do something kind of similar every year where the enemy's patrolling along the main roadway while we're walking up, and we have to like actively be looking for them while not trying to engage them unless we are engaged upon. They followed at least the beginning of the event, the role players, so the red team, they follow the same type of rule set that we did at Scapegoat, which I talked about before, where they're kind of like Metal Gear Solid enemies, where they'll be like, huh, what was that noise? And they'll go and look for you. But if you're like actively trying to make an effort to hide and you're doing your best with whatever you have to hide, they'll play it off like they can't see you, like
Right.
to push the event forward. Because obviously we're in airsoft and engagement distances are much shorter than in the real world, right? So they have to make it kind of like cinematic as well as not too I guess there's no better way to say it, but like hard-assed on like finding us for the initial
Yeah.
like cinematic entries type of thing. So our main thing was get up to the base, secure the base. Once the base is secured and we put the JTF Shepherd flag up on the flagpole, then we've officially secured the base, and the Deuce and a Half got brought in with all of our gear.
Yeah, and it just, correct me if I'm wrong, but Red Team is not trying to win. Like they don't get to win this event. Like it's not that kind of game, right? Like they're trying to push the story along just like you guys are.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no, in that context, in that respect, I guess there is no real like winning and losing for them. Like for you, yeah, but for them, that's not really their goal, right?
Absolutely. So red team can be told that they should win a fight, right? Like there might be a situation where maybe the respawn rules are changed to make it seem like there's a lot more of them than there really are. And their goal is to not have you win this fight. Or if you win this fight, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to. But they are not there, like most airsoft games. They're not there as paying players. They're there as volunteer staff. So they're there to push the story forward, to have you create your own story while also maintaining the atmosphere of what you're in. So it's like the most pure form of airsoft that there is. Like back when you were in the backyard playing with your friends, which I never did because I came into airsoft as an adult when we had all the cool stuff. But it's the same as like, man, like I'm just going out there just to have fun. Like I know that my friends are not going to be cheating. The red team isn't going to be cheating. Like that gives you like a clearer head. So like you're never like, oh, I should have hit that guy. I definitely hit him and he's not calling it type of thing. Like there's no stakes out here, which with a lot of big milsims, it gets to be like that, where people are like, I paid money to be here. I don't think that he should have won that fight. I'm not going to call that hit. Like that's non-existent at these type of events where it's staff versus you, at least on the staff end. I haven't heard complaints of like players not calling their hits as well, but the main idea going into it and what the event runner Gordon had said is red team is going to call their hits. Like these guys are going to call their hits. Like don't not call your hits. Like play the game, like play the event, like have the experience. If you get shot, just call it. Like there's nothing to gain from this. Like it's all for the story. So it's like the cleanest version of like airsoft that we've played typically happens at this event.
That's such a cool way of looking at it from the standpoint of like if you take away the stakes and people aren't gonna cheat, because like I mean like yeah, you might have a couple of special people who decide to do that, but the average person is not going to cheat because it's like who cares? Like I'm not going to win, I'm not going to lose. Like that's a really good way of looking at it. So and especially for the red team, it's like yeah, maybe you guys who the red team were shooting at weren't calling your hits, but like they don't care either because they're not gonna win or lose. Like I mean, yeah, you're right. It's like the purest form of just like we're gonna play the game, we're gonna have a good time. So at this point, you're using your night vision basically the whole time, I would guess, right?
As soon as we stepped off. So like everybody that had night vision while we were waiting around in like the staging area going over the initial event launch with Gordon, like where we're going to be coming in from and what the situation is, we already had our night vision on because we expected, well, first of all, something to mention is once you load out that truck, until you get that truck to your base, you're not getting any gear that's on that truck back, right? So if you have water on the truck and you don't have any on you, if you didn't bring enough BBs, if you didn't bring your radio, if you didn't bring your night vision, and all of a sudden it gets dark, there were years where it took 5+ hours from the initial step off to securing the base. And in between that time, they had no access to the gear that was loaded on the truck. So we've learned from previous years now, when you step off, you got to be stepped off with like a patrol mission set loadout so that you are ready for whatever happens. And it could be hours. So you got to make sure you have a full fighting loadout of water, spare BBs if you have to redcon back to the main gate, spare ammo, spare batteries is what I was trying to say. Make sure you have all your comms. Like if you have a warming layer and it's going to be cold, like make sure that you have that on you as well. Like all of the things, because at any given point, you could just not have access to your gear. So we walked out with our night vision knowing that it would either be dark or soon to be dark as soon as we stepped off. And yes, so as soon as we initialized like the walking, like it was already dark enough for nods. So all of us that have nods, I believe between our two squads, because we had 1-2 and 1-3, we were playing with the Camelot squad as well. I think we had like 10 sets of nods between the like 20 or so people that we had with us. So a good amount of night capability in our squads.
I'm just curious because this is me not knowing, but like how long do your batteries last for a set of night vision?
So it depends. Typically with night vision, you're recommended to use only lithium batteries, whether or not that's a AA, a lithium AA, or I believe CR123s, all of them are lithium. I could be wrong on that. But for a normal PVS 14, which is typically what you'll see that's running a lithium battery, in good weather, I believe it's like 30 to 40 hours on a single battery. For mine specifically, because mine are running CR123As, those are supposed to be like 40 to 60 hours in good weather. So CR123As are pretty baller for night vision. Essentially, if you go in with fresh batteries, they will last you more than enough for probably multiple weekends, as long as you're not wearing them for 8 hours a night every single night that you're out there.
So you're walking up now from the start line to the fob. And it's your first time doing this with night vision compared to previous times when you've done it. How, like, I guess you are able to bring that into contrast in your own mind to be like, wow, this is like so different than previous years. Like, did that hit you like right away? You're like, oh my God, I was missing so much. Or were you like, just, this is kind of cool. And that was sort of it.
So me being me and saying like I never want to go into anything using it for the first time, I've used, and like I've told you, I've used my night vision a ton of times outside of airsoft, just walking or riding a bike or like other stuff, like just looking up at the stars and just like LARPing around my house. So I'm very comfortable with them as it is. I've put, I think I was talking with one of my teammates, Jeff, about this. I've probably put between 60 to 80 hours of wearing night vision and doing stuff with night vision already. So I'm comfortable with the concept of night vision, and since I've used it at events, like I understand the advantage that you can get. But here specifically, like you said, this is the first time that we're stepping off on the patrol section of wearing night vision, and almost immediately I found that it was much easier to not follow people while we were wearing them. We were able to confidently lead the group in because we had a couple of the night vision guys up in the squad up front. We were able to see what we were doing. We were able to much further away see if there was a patrol coming with flashlights, as opposed to like waiting to see the beam actually come to us or hit a tree. As soon as that light is off in the distance, like goes anywhere into our vision, it is like immediately noticeable. So it was totally different for detecting patrols. And at this event, I wouldn't say it's a necessity, but almost every single person on Red Team has night vision. So we've played this event for both the times prior to this with nobody on our squad with night vision, and we've done fine. But it's different, right? Everybody, when you're fighting everybody that has night vision, you are just actively at a disadvantage at this event because you're waiting to see movement, you're waiting to see light, you're waiting to see all of that, where they have just much better navigational skill than you because they can actually see what they're walking into. They can look down and see that they're stepping into a puddle or there's a stump. You don't have to feel your way through with your feet as much. So huge difference off the rip, but not just because I could see in the dark, more so just as a confidence ability, being able to walk easier without being afraid that I'm going to trip and fall on something that I can't see because I'm following the guy in front of me, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I can certainly, having followed you into a 3-story building, I can certainly appreciate the not worrying about tripping on stuff that you can't see at all, like zero. So yeah, I get it. So let's talk about the actual meat of the event now. So you get to your fob, like you presumably got your truck within like a reasonable time frame and unloaded your kit.
Yeah, so first things first, as we get up to the base, we see some flashlights, people walking around, we think we see a fire. So what we were told is that the people at the base are enemies. They're the harm militia over there. So we pull up, we can't see anything besides flashlights, right? That's all we see. And Jeff is leading, and he gets immediately hit like dead on by a flashlight. And it looks like to Jeff, because Jeff is the one that's reacting, he's the first guy, it looks like they're pointing a gun at him. So Jeff instinctively, as soon as that happens, and it's a little blurry, he's still not sure exactly what happened first, but an exchange of fire happened. Jeff was hit, and so we opened fire on what we assumed was the enemy, only to find out that it was actually the local civilian population that was there just at the base, just occupying it, of which we were not able to find any guns afterwards. So somehow Jeff got shot in the head during that engagement. And we neutralized the target, went there, rendered aid, talked to them. Obviously, they were not very happy with us. I gave one a Slim Jim, and he seemed to be kind of okay with that.
He snapped right into
bribes.
it.
Oh, yeah, they take food bribes pretty well. Speaking of, that Slim Jim I actually had in my vest since Iron Horse. I opened up my vest at the event and went, oh my God, I have Slim Jims in here. And I just had like a stack of like 20 of them, just like mini ones inside my pocket. So those came in great use for it. But first things first, we had a bit of a weird engagement. We were not able to locate any guns. Jeff did get hit. He called it, but we couldn't find anything. So it started off with a bit of a misstep. After we said sorry and tried talking to them, they were really hardcore not wanting to talk to us. I was trying to talk to some guy, and he pretty much just kept shooing me away with his cane while he was hobbling around saying, you've helped us enough. We don't need any more of your help. If that's how you help someone, I don't want any help. And yeah, so that was stressful right off the get-go for that situation. But yeah, so we secured the base. Truck comes up. We don't unload the truck this year. The first year we have not unloaded the truck, which was nice. We love that. And so as soon as the truck unloads, we grab our gear, we try to establish kind of where we set up camp before, but we see that there's a military tent that's set up in our normal spot that we've established. So we take probably 25 minutes or so, like setting up our camping supplies, like out in the woods, set up our tarps. This is the first time I've hammock camped. It is totally OP, like totally cheat mode for camping in the woods when you don't want to lay on the ground. Extremely comfortable, and they pack super small. So I'm going to be picking myself up a hammock soon, because now that I understand how that is, it's pretty great. And after that, we are pretty much immediately sent on our first mission of the night. And what we're told is there's a down plane. We don't have any knowledge on whether or not the pilot is still alive, I believe, is how we were told. But we were instructed to find the plane, which we know where it is because it hasn't moved since the last event. But we were instructed to find the down plane, bring Gordon, the event runner, over to it, and essentially have him plant a satchel and detonate the plane so that the harm rebels cannot get the technology that's out of it and reverse engineer it and use it against us. So it's dark now, very dark.
What time of the day would it have been at that point?
I'd like to say it was probably like 11:30 ish, maybe a little bit later. We stepped off at like 8:30, so maybe like 2.5 to 3 hours after that. Maybe a little less. It might have been a little bit earlier, but it's hard to measure time when you're out there because it's just like perpetually dark. So unless you're looking at your watch all the time, either time goes by super fast or super slow. There's like no in between. So I'd say it was somewhere between like 10 and 12 at the time, probably closer to like 10:30-ish.
Gotcha. So you're going out on this mission to find this downed pilot and blow up the plane. And it's pitch dark. You've been going for a while. Is it, when you say you, like, is it just your squad, or how did they assign missions? Was it like to individual players or cells or squads, or?
So it depended on the mission. For this one specifically, it was just our squad. We were 1-2. So Camelot was 1-3. So sometimes we combined with 1-3, but for this specific mission, we only went out as 1-2. And essentially, we're walking out of the south side of the base past the bunker, where we crawled up to last year to take back the base during that whole like crawl, like 200 feet type of thing in the pitch dark. That's where we were. So we're walking down the trail. To preface this, I'm running my stoner. So the event specifically called for Western weapons. They wanted us to have a Western impression with Western weapons. So I wasn't running my RPK this year purely to kind of fit in with what the event runner wanted for their image of the event. And I had the stoner. So I'm running the stoner. I got a new box mag in it. I just soldered it up the previous, I think like 2 days before that. Different feeding mechanism, and it works great. So we're walking into the dark, and essentially Jeff is leading us in. We had a pretty well-spaced wedge walking down this trail with the nods guys leading. So Jeff, being the fire team lead that he was leading our group in, and we're walking up and we immediately see flashlights, probably 10 seconds into our walk, of people around the area. So we're following the flashlights, but keeping a distance, not knowing if it's the harm militia or civilians. And as we get closer, the flashlights go off. All right. So Jeff got really close to these guys. Like Jeff was saying that he was probably within like 10 feet of these guys in the dark. And we don't know who they are. Right. So we don't just want to open fire. So Jeff starts calling out to them. Like, who are you? Like, show yourself, talk to me. We need to know who we're talking to. And they didn't answer at all. Right. So Jeff's just staring at probably like 3 or 4 guys just like stacked up on top of each other in the road that we're walking down. And Jeff finally just took the first shot. And as soon as he took the first shot, he just got immediately laced by like everybody. So he took out like 1 or 2 guys. He got laced. I started putting down fire, and my gun stops feeding. So my gun just stops feeding and I get hit. So I'm hit. I'm dead. Edgar's right behind me and he's a medic. So Edgar crawls up to me real low, puts a medic band on my left arm, and as soon as I get that, I cross the road. So I was on the left side of the road. I crossed the trail to the right, and I got down into like a defilade position, so a little bit of a downhill. So I had ground cover from the enemies that were shooting at us. So I get over there, I'm shooting my gun, I'm trying to get it to feed. It's not feeding, right? I'm freaking out at this point because I cannot see anything outside of my night vision. I can only use my night vision to see, and things are really close to me right now, and it's really dark. And if anybody's used night vision, unless you adjust your focus, things that are really close to you are going to be very blurry. And I did not have the time to adjust my night vision's focus to work in the area that I was in. So I'm over there, I'm on the ground, I'm slapping my mag, I'm taking it off, putting it back in, making sure there's no jams in it. Still not feeding, right? But in the meantime, while that's happening, I'm the only LMG in the group here, or Jeremy actually was also an LMG, but he wasn't in the angle of the fight at that moment. So I'm still sitting up and like trying to shoot, but my gun's not feeding. But the enemy team, if they're not listening well, don't know that. So I keep suppressing while my gun is not working. And then I would stop, another 30 seconds of trying to figure out what is going on with my gun, sit back up again, lay down another couple more bursts, go back down, do it again. To the point where one of the guys on the enemy team was like, "Your aim sucks." And in my head, I'm like, man, if only you knew right now, like what's going on. But that means to me that they thought that I was firing at them. So hopefully I was still suppressing in their head, and they're trying to like avoid my fire. And they kept returning fire at my position every single time. So they knew where I kind of was, but not exactly had an angle on me. So finally, I open the magazine from the bottom. I'm feeling it. The tube, the little metal spring tube, is out of the mechanism that feeds the BBs. And I go, okay, I got to find this tube. So I'm digging through the BBs inside, and I find the tube, and I take it, and I shove it into the mechanism. I zip it up, turn it around, burst of fire, and it starts feeding again. And I'm like, thank God I can actually fight right now. Because it was probably like 2 or 3 minutes, stressful minutes, of trying to troubleshoot that in the dark.
I bet it felt like an hour.
Oh, it did. It did. I was like, this is the worst possible time. Like right in this first engagement, my gun goes down. Like worst time for it to happen. So I get up on my knees and I start firing at the last known positions. And I'm finally actually firing. So I'm firing, stop, and I see a little blinking light. It's dark. I see just the smallest blinking light. And there's a lot of dead guys behind me on my team. Come to find out, that blinking light was my buddy on red team named Ruben, and he was hiding behind a tree. So I bursted his tree and took him out very quickly, and then slowly kind of worked my way around the angle of my hill. I think I took out 2 or 3 more red team guys over like the next minute or so, and started exchanging some words with some of the red team guys who were having a time, I guess. I think I shot a couple guys that were dead. I couldn't see. They were hiding behind trees, so I couldn't see the red light. So I apologized. They made some comments. We made some comments. I'm sure there's a video of it somewhere. But essentially, they called me a LARPer. And I was like, I think we're all LARPing right now. Right now, out in the woods. I think we're all doing the same thing. So anyways, that fight happened. I killed a couple of guys. And then I stopped and I yelled behind me. I said, "Who's still up?" Nobody answered. Right? None of my teammates answered. So I stopped and I repeated again. And I said, "Who's still up?" And then I hear like 5 or 6 just, I'm up, from people that were still alive behind me. So we regain our confidence. We get up. I know that there's still somebody alive over there. We know there's at least 1 or 2. I think we counted at the end. It felt like there were like 7 or 8. There might have just been 5, but it felt like 7 or 8 guys. I get up. I call him in. I said, we got to start clearing these guys out. Squad lead tells us to start clearing the guys out, but he wants me to walk forward. And I said, Tanner, you want me to clear this area right now with my LMG? And as soon as Kyle, who was told to clear, started walking forward, he started getting engaged by Ruben's brother. I believe it was Simon. And I saw Simon as soon as the fire started, and I was able to move over to him, hit him, and then the engagement was effectively done at that point. Very stressful. It's hugely stressful, but we got almost all of our guys back up revived. I think there were like 3 dead left. We detonated the plane, and we got the hell out of there. There was a bit of a, I think one of the red team members lost his red light. And there was like a bit of a, not an altercation, but the guy wanted to look for his red light, but like we were still clearing, and we were like, can you not walk around right now while we're in the middle of this? Because we're trying to continue this fight. We'll
Mhm.
just stand next to a dead guy. There was like a little bit, not an argument, but a weird situation that happened where the event runner who was next to us was like, all right, like who's leading red team here? Called him in, said, all right, we'll talk later. And essentially the fight was done. So stressful fight. First thing at like, in, I have to say at this point, it's like 11:30.
Mhm.
So we detonate the plane, we get out of there, get back to base. And, yeah, that was like the first real engagement of the night. Very stressful, very
Yeah,
stressful.
sounds like it. So did you go back and have a rest rotation after that particular engagement, or were you looking for more missions to go back out, or like
So
how entrepreneurial were you being at that point?
we were just listening to what CO really had for us
Mhm.
at this time. So I pulled the best straw for this event, and I got to pick our sleep schedule, which segment we were in, and I picked 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. And the reason I picked 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., where the other ones were like 2 to 5 a.m. and then there was one that was like 8 to 11, then there was one that was like 2 to 5 in the afternoon, like something horrible like I did not want. So the reason I picked 5 to 8 a.m. was because historically I found that the most downtime at this event happens between the hours of, you know 5 and 9 in the
Mhm.
morning, when most people are still waking up, they're having breakfast, like red team's waking up having breakfast, the event runner might be waking up still. So I wanted us to sleep during the most downtime time possible of this event so we wouldn't get bothered.
Mhm.
So we get back to base and essentially we're told to pull security. So
Okay.
we're pulling security. I'd like to say at this point it's probably from 1 till about 5 a.m. We're pulling security at the base, like, and we're getting like randomly attacked. Our guys are starting to fall asleep. We're doing a buddy system where, when you're watching, your buddy's sleeping, and then when your buddy's sleeping, you're watching. So we're always like kind of trade off on rest. But we were tired at that point. We had been up the whole day, and we were really just trying to make it through till the 5 a.m. So at this time, 1-3 went off and did a mission, and their mission was like scouring the whole field. Like they walked like all the way down to the parking lot, got something, came all the way back. I think they got a bunch of mission like props, like missiles and guns and all this other stuff that they were needed to for that.
Mhm.
But this whole time we're just like holding security, hearing things in the woods, maybe the occasional pop shot here and there type of stuff for the first night.
Gotcha. So then you eventually got your sleep schedule, etc. And I mean, pulling security for multiple hours. I mean, you should be really good at that now. I mean, we had lots of practice.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you woke up the next, well, not the next morning, but later that day basically, and um then went back out for missions. Like how did the rest of that, because now it's daytime, right? So you're not using nods, so it's different vibe, right?
Yep. So, woke up, nods are already off. We get ready. We have our breakfast in the morning, and immediately we're on security. Um, so during our security, we're just kind of, holding the base, still regular stuff. We're not really having anything go on. Typically, when we're holding security, especially for like the first night, we have like a lot of like, we hear things in the woods, or we're having people just come up, shoot like 2 shots, and then run away, so that we can never really relax, type of thing.
Hmm.
Um, this event, the closest we had to that was a small group of them had come in from the north side of the base, and they weren't fighting us, they were fighting a different group, a different squad, but we were defending the south, so we didn't really get into that engagement much until we fanned out. This was right before we went to sleep. We fanned out, and I believe we got the last 2 guys that were like out near our sleeping area, and then we were like, all right, let's go to sleep. So we wake up in the morning, and the first thing we do is eat breakfast. So
Yeah.
it's 8 a.m. We're eating food. We're getting ready for our missions. But overall, like there was like not much that happened the first night for us at the base. Like we went out on the mission, but that was about it. The occasional pop shot here and there. There was one notable moment where Jeff was sleeping on a barrier, and out of his dead sleep, he heard like a shot and somebody yelled contact. And Jeff, like out of his sleep, just woke up and was like, contact! And he didn't even know what was going on. But afterwards, we talked to him, and he's like, I was sleeping, and I heard the shot, and I just woke up, and I just yelled contact. And everybody in the group like went on alert like immediately. But it was really funny afterwards to hear that like Jeff was like totally sleeping, like dozing off at that point, and just like woke up out of a dead sleep for that. Like it was pretty tense for him. But so first thing, we wake up, and I'm pretty sure we're just on security for another couple of hours in the morning. After we pull security for a couple of hours in the morning, we get, I believe, the first opportunity to do the boat mission. And the boat mission was essentially what it sounds like. There's a couple like little wooden or slash metal boats that have a couple of oars, and one of them can fit 2 people, the other can fit 3. So you can fit like a max of 5 people out on the water at the same time. But that was one part of our squad. The part of the squad that I was in went up to the top of the hill where we called it beacon. Essentially, there is this one beacon at the top of this hill that is constantly flashing. And our responsibility for the whole weekend, really, was to hold that hill that had that beacon. Make sure that the red team cannot shut off that beacon, because if they do, that cuts our line of contact to the outside. And our advisors, being the 2 event runners, Gordon and Bigfoot, would no longer be able to give us missions until we establish contact with that beacon again. So it was like a constant, like, got to keep this up the whole time. Somebody always has to be over there watching it, because if not, we can't do anything until we get it back. So half our squad goes on the boat mission. Half our squad goes up this beacon hill, which is a pretty big hill, like with a pretty steep cliff face. And we're just pulling security up there. Boat mission guys get back. They did well. They didn't. None of them fell over into the water. Apparently, what they had to do was find a cable and follow it through the water, like underneath the water, to some piece of machinery. Pull it up, mark it with like a tag, take a picture of it, and then go back. So they accomplished that super quickly. And then once they were done, they came up the beacon hill to where we were, where our squad lead was hearing voices towards towards the west side, where Moor Sand Gully was. So once Bravo squad came up, they replaced us, and Tanner, our squad lead, was like, let's take one element and go out and investigate. So essentially we follow Tanner, we're walking up and down, and we take this, what seems like a goat path, down the back of this hill towards a village that's set up at the location. We sneak into the village, no communication verbally at all. Everybody is just silently walking. We're spaced out probably 30 feet from each other the entire way. Very cool part of the event, where we were just kind of navigating in silence and talking to each other without words the entire time. So we sneak down to the village. I'm pulling Overwatch. We find a couple of supply crates down in the village, and we radio into command. And command tells us to leave them be. There are supply crates. Essentially, that whatever that mission is, we've either accomplished it or it's for something later. So we pull back. We meet up with the event runner at the bottom of the hill, because we weren't technically supposed to be over there. We were supposed to be on Beacon Hill, right? But we were told the next boat mission wouldn't be for a while. So we left part of our squad up there, and we went to go, make the event for us. Go around and explore a bit and see what we can do. Pull some recon. And the event runner was essentially like, what were you guys doing down there? Like, I heard Boat Squad was in the village. I'm like, so part of Boat Squad was in the village, but the other part of Boat Squad was holding Beacon, where we were supposed to be. So he's like, essentially like, I don't tell you guys what to do. I tell you guys the missions, and you guys make the event for yourselves. So he wasn't mad at us. We thought we were kind of in trouble for a second. Like, what were you guys doing down there? This seemed to be like a bit of a miscommunication, because once we got back to base, the CO was like, why were you guys in the village? And he was like, that wasn't the mission at all. And we were like, so we left people at the beacon. We were exploring. He's like, oh, okay. That's not a problem then. He's like, a misunderstanding. We were just there. We heard voices. We're going to go look for him. If we find red team eating their lunch, you damn well know, if they're bad guys, that we're going to make them go eat lunch somewhere else. Like,
exactly.
They can't just be near us talking that entire time. So we were trying to make the most of it. But yeah, so that was that mission. That's pretty much how that went. So after that, we went on another couple of hours of us hanging out at base, hearing a couple shots every now and then. Not a ton of stuff happened in between that time and our next mission, which for us was the boat mission again, where the rest of our team went up to Beacon Hill. So this time I went out on the boat with Jeff, Tanner, and then I was in a boat with Edgar and Kyle. And essentially what we were told is that there's a weapons cache somewhere along the peninsula. So what we're thinking is there's a weapons cache somewhere near the water. We'll just see it. So we're boating up and down this freaking, the water side, just looking for something. We're not finding anything. And we go all the way up around the bend, and we're looking again. We're like, oh, there's something over there. But we're like, I don't know, this is a little too far. Like, would it be over here? All the while, we're just kind of chilling in a boat. And the rules of the boat were, we're not supposed to fire from the boat. We're not supposed to be fired upon while we're in the boat. But we can die if they hit us with like a launchable. So if they like have like an airburst that lands near us, or like a foam dart or something that hits the boat, then essentially like we're all dead. But us three we're all looking for this thing in the water, and we can't find anything. We're going up and down the wall. And finally, Tanner and Jeff, what we were told was, if you do find anything, it's going to be very obvious. So we're like, if it's obvious, like, where is it? Like, we can't see anything. And Tanner and Jeff say, okay, well, we're going to get off the boat. And they crested the hill up to where there's like a foundation where there was supposed to be a house built, or maybe there was at some point, but now all that's left is the concrete foundation. There's nothing else there, where they found the missile cache with all of the weapons. So, yeah, that's how that went. Tanner was like, apparently there were a few red team guys that were red conning, so they were dead when they were up there. And they didn't know if they were just going to like turn around and take off their dead rags and like start shooting them when they were carrying away stuff. So they kind of booked it out of there. So they weren't sure if they got all of the weapon stash that was up there. But we're pretty sure. And essentially we were like, okay, well, maybe we'll go check it out just to make sure there's no weapons. And as soon as we pulled up to the edge of the water, we see just like 2 or 3 red team guys just like at the crest of the hill, just like staring at us. And we're like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do this anymore.
Yeah, really.
They weren't dead anymore. They were just there, just looking at us. I'm like, I don't think there's a world that we get out of this boat without dying. So we went back. We did accomplish the mission. We got all the weapons, and we went back to base. So that was about it. I'd say after that, we didn't go on many far away missions. We had one more mission before the festival where we ate food, which was going out to what is a location, I believe it was either known as Alpha or Area. It was something with an A. And essentially it was all the way back down the road that we walked in on, in the woods to the right side, if you're walking up the road, like from the spawn area at the beginning of the game. So we're walking through the trails. We're tired at this point. We're like, all right, this is our mission. Essentially, it's go. We hear them taunting us over the radio, and our command is like, go kill those guys. Like, body bags. Like, everybody there, body bags, except for the one person that's like a hostage. It's like a hostage situation. So we're walking down the hill. We are really spread out, like super spread out, like at least 30 feet in between each person that's like walking down this trail. So really good spacing on all of us. And we're following Jeff, and I'm right behind Jeff because we have fire team lead and then Saw up at the front. But I'm far enough away so that I can engage without dying first. And Jeff walks right into the road where there's like a down Jeep. And Ruben, Simon, and his brother Luke are all just waiting in ambush right there. And Ruben's like laying down behind like a Jeep. So he shoots me with what is essentially a shower shell from probably like 6 feet away.
Oh my God.
All of them just hit me like straight into my back. And I kind of just like winced, and I was like, yeah, I'm dead. And then I look and I see just his eyes like looking up at me like from behind the Jeep. And Jeff's dead and Kyle's dead, but we still have like our whole squad up behind us. So I see Ruben's guys pull out. They're like crossing the road. They're pretty young, and they just run. So they were just like running through pretty much everything that was over there. Some pretty treacherous terrain that they were making moves through, while the rest of our squad moved in and revived us. And then we got into a pretty massive firefight across the road. Nothing super notable about this firefight. Like, it was a good firefight. They were a patrol. Us is a patrol walking in on enemies that are already dug in. Right. So we're in a bad spot, and we ended up kind of following, squad lead command said that he wanted us to go down off the road and fight them up the hill, which in retrospect, we maybe would have, if we went far enough left, we would have avoided the confrontation and come up from the side. But we kind of ended up just like fighting them uphill with nobody supporting us on the road. So,
right.
So we fought them. We took out a good amount of them. A couple of them came out and got us. And then I think it was like a one-on-one at the end, where, after like 45 minutes, like we were pretty much all dead. Really good fight, like a good fight with the guys. A couple of them respawned and came up the road and then shot us in the back, which was my fear like they're gonna come up the road. Maybe
Yeah.
we should be on the road or something. But overall, it was just a good overall fight. And by that time, it's getting close to dinner time. So dinner time rolls along. We go back to base. They ask if we want to go back out again. We're like, sure, we'll go back out again. And then as soon as we start walking out, they're like, hold it. There's no need. There's no need to go back out. Just like hang around here. There's no point in going to that objective. So we're like, okay. So dinner time happens. One of my first things that I'll mention here. The dinner this year was not as good as last year. Last year they had like multiple different types of meats like that you were making into like fajitas or like soft tacos, like a lot of food. And this year it was burgers and hot dogs. Just a minor complaint, but like different than it was, like a different vibe than it was. There were different people cooking. Last year they had a guy from Red Team cook. This year we had a guy from our command cooking. Just like a different feel, and it felt like a little bit less organized during that whole phase. I think they might have forgotten something. I heard Gordon say like, "Is that all you got?" or something like that, and he's like, "I only got burgers here," or something like that. So, we had our food. We drank the yeet tea, which was extremely strong this year. Gordon made a hell of a concoction of some. I'm pretty sure it was like some whiskey, pretty strong in that yeet tea. I actually have a picture of it. I'll send it to you after this, Phil, of him pouring me some. But so then we have dinner. We're just kind of relaxing. And it's starting to get dark. So I feel like I've gone through a lot of stuff, but everything that I've talked about is kind of how this event has gone for us so far. So there wasn't as much stuff where it was like interesting. We were leaving base and getting into cool engagements and recons and role playing and stuff like that this year. There wasn't a lot of that. It was a lot more hanging out at base with the boys, just like chilling, waiting to see if people will shoot at us and then waiting to go out on missions, but a lot less so than last year.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's striking to me compared to what we talked about last time that we had this conversation was that it definitely felt like the last edition there was this real feeling of just, I don't know, tension, unease, creepiness, maybe like eeriness, something like that, which probably has to do with, well, now you have Nod, so you can see what's going on as opposed to just not knowing at all. It's like it's just dark. But regardless, I'm getting this sense that that's how this was this year. Like it was less tense overall. Like you mentioned a couple of times, like, yeah, we'd be sitting around, got a couple pot shots, but that was kind of it. Yeah, that certainly sounds like that's a difference this year as well.
Yeah, it definitely was different. Part of that is because there was much less red team than this year. So I think there was supposed to be like 30 red team to like the 50 of us, which would have been a huge difference. I think there ended up being like 17, somewhere around that. So it was pretty unbalanced, which meant that if you went out on a mission and red team needed to be there, then red team wasn't at your base. Because when you're sending people out on a mission, there's like, 11 or 12 in a squad going out to fight. So you have to put a good amount of your red team force there to ward them off or, interact with them. So there was a lot less of, just things happening. There wasn't really creepy noises at night. There's some issues going on with the field and the state. Like there's some things going on behind the scenes that, without going into too much detail, that I'm not aware of. There's some things that are restricted. Like we weren't able to make certain loud noises after X time at night. We had a ton of fireworks, like blank fire. Like most of that stuff was not supposed to happen. And there was a pause during the event because there was a miscommunication between like the field owner and the field runner about like what we could and couldn't be doing. To the point where it seemed like the situation moving forward for the field is maybe this event won't be here next time. Like this might be one of the last ones. So it felt restricted in that way. And it felt, and I'll get into more of that in a minute. But it felt restricted moving into the last phase of the event as well. So after we eat dinner, this was part of one of the cooler interactions during the event, but Gordon pulls us all in. He's giving us a mission briefing of, hey, since we had that pause, we're going to have to skip a couple of things going on. And I'm going to tell you kind of what would have happened and what we're working under the guys that you did complete. So he's reading us this thing. He gets a call over the radio. He responds back saying that we are at position Prometheus. And then he continues on saying, that makes sense now that I think of it, because he was telling the red team essentially where we were at that time, like that were all in position, so to speak. So Gordon's giving us this like this rally up of like, hey, it's going to get a lot harder from here. Like, just make sure that you guys are like ready for the fight, and you guys, just like let the event happen, essentially. And while he's reading through the brief of what we've accomplished, fireworks go off. They get launched over the base, and those are to simulate mortar fire coming in. So anytime you see fireworks, you hear blanks, anything like that, you are supposed to immediately take cover. So that firework happens and interrupts like the speech that we're having from Gordon, and essentially we all have to like rush to our positions on security in the base, where we start getting attacked by red team. So it's dark, very dark. We are constantly getting backlit by lights that are behind us on the base. So red team's like coming to fight us, but they can see our silhouettes moving all the time while we're looking into the dark woods to try to find these guys. And you can kind of imagine how that would have been advantageous for them. They're able to see us pretty damn well because of how well lit it is behind us, essentially silhouetting every movement that we make if we're not in the right position. And we're looking into pitch black woods. Even with night vision, while we could see, seeing is a word for it. You can see things, but you're not seeing perfect details of anything. You can see movement, you can see maybe blips of light, you can see it's a different experience when you're in the dark, where it's not like you can see perfect anymore. It's more so just based on your overall senses. So we start getting attacked. Fight happens. We got 2 or 3 red team guys that keep attacking us. Once they die, they rotate and they start attacking from a different angle. Then we start fighting them there. One of the guys got like into our sleeping area, and we got into a huge fight with him because he was like within like 5 feet of like the main base. And this whole time they're trying to take the flag, essentially make us not be able to respawn there anymore and have to go back to base. So we ward them off. It's probably like an hour or so of fighting. And then our last mission of the night, essentially what we were told is they have holed up on the beacon hill. That is where their base is. We must go to that beacon hill, take down their flag, and that will effectively stop their respawn. And essentially that would end the event, right? So our squad is tasked with being the distraction, right? We are told to walk up Main Street, essentially. This is a huge cliff face, like pretty much straight up cliff face. And we're told to walk down into the opening and bring the fight to these guys while we have 2 other squads move around the right and the left. So while we're doing this, we're walking up Main Street. Huge firefight ensues. We got a couple of guys up on the big ridge, which is pretty high up, and Tanner takes the guys without nods and pretty much just has them scale straight up this cliff face in the dark using smoke grenades, suppression, and white light. And they just pretty much like straight on sent it like straight up this hill. And everybody else, Gordon actually came over to me and he's like, I just watched the craziest thing I've ever seen. He's like, those guys just went straight up the damn cliff, like with violence. Like they just used violence and got straight up that cliff. He's like, everybody else is over here hiding. And those guys just said, screw it. We're going straight up the cliff. So they climbed the cliff. A couple of guys flanked around behind us, got into a bit of a firefight there. I got Ruben, and then his brother got me. And soon after that, we pulled down the flag. And that was how the event ended. We took some Band of Brothers-esque pictures up on the top of the hill with the clouds behind us and being like pitch black holding up the flag. And that was it. That's how the event ended. So cool. It was a really cool ending.
It's vibes from last year where you went up that hill. Well, with no nods, like that was you last year, basically, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It was totally different seeing it the way that I saw it this year. But watching the guys, it was like, I don't know if you've seen World War Z, Phil, but it's a zombie movie where the zombies will crawl up each other. They'll create like a human ladder of sorts where they'll just like, one will crawl over the other, then they'll get crawled over to like scale walls and stuff. And that's kind of like what it looked like from my point of view while our guys were straight up scaling this cliff face.
Funny.
Like, it was pretty nuts. Tanner got shot in the face, I think, by a teammate. He did a pretty bad one to the nose. But overall, like the ending of it was cool. But yeah, that's how the event played out. We eliminated their fire base at the end. We stopped their respawn, and that was it.
That's awesome. Like these events, they sound amazing, and I just, I kind of get the sense just from some like a couple of things that you said during this episode that it didn't live up to your expectations fully compared to what you had done in previous years. That's the sense that I'm getting. And I'm just curious, sort of like, what was the biggest thing that, because I know that, I mean, Gordon hopefully will listen to this episode. And if he does, like, what would be the feedback that you gave, whether you would give him to say, like, this would have made a big difference for us this year?
So I think a lot of the problem was really out of his control. I think it was kind of two things happened at once, where if one of them didn't happen, it wouldn't have been so bad. But increasing the ticket amount and not meeting full people to be able to, all of the tickets, if they would have sold, then we would have been in squads of 5, and we would have been able to combine into a squad of 15. So we didn't get to do that. So instead, our group had to be split into 2 different squads, which was not really what we signed up for. And we weren't really told that that was happening until it was too late. And then it was, all right, now we're running 2 separate squads. So if we would have kept the ticket cap at the same that it was last year, we would have sold out. Hopefully people wouldn't have dropped, because there was a couple of people that dropped. But I think the combination of more tickets being sold and the unfortunate situation with a lot of people from Red Team having to cancel at the last minute made it feel super unbalanced, and it really made it lack that tension, right? And I'm not saying that this is anything from Gordon's fault. Maybe the increasing tickets, we could have done without that. But the Red Team not being there, they are like a pivotal part of this event. I feel like this event, our squad specifically, didn't get to role play much with them, besides shooting some civilians at the beginning. But we don't talk about that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's write that off. That didn't happen. But we didn't get to role play much. We didn't get to go on like a cool like recon mission where there was like an interaction happening down in a market where we're making trades and it's all tense and stuff like that. Like last year, you remember the drone situation where the drone came up over us and we were like, we're compromised type of thing. Like nothing like that happened this year. And I have to attribute that to, out of the event runner's control, not enough staff being there for us to be able to have the action. Add into that, there wasn't any creepy stuff that happened at night. There was like some beepers, like little cricket sound makers that they threw into a couple people's bags and placed around the base, which some of our guys found when they got home. They found some like sound beacons inside their bags, which we were like, where was that sound coming from the whole weekend? Which was like psychological, right? But besides that, we really didn't have that like psychological tension that we typically had. We didn't have creepy sounds being played at night. We didn't have random fight whistles being blown thinking that we're going to get attacked. The overall attacks at night were very minimal compared to what they normally are. And I can only attribute that to not having as many Red Team there and having them be too spread thin for what they needed to do for us for this event. So really not, the event was not bad. I still had a great time. Certainly. All of the guys had a great time, right? But compared to the last 2 events that we've been to, a different feeling. It just didn't have the same liveliness as we expected from the event. There was a lot more downtime. Security didn't feel like security. It felt like we were just waiting around, waiting to do stuff. Stuff like that, it adds up over the event. And then when the event ends, you look back, and now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, man, there wasn't a lot of stuff that we did. Like I talked about the missions that we did, but like we went on like realistically like 2 missions and then the boat mission that we had nothing happen during. So it was, I really wish that we had more interaction with the Red Team this year. I feel like that would have made a huge difference, let alone if there were sound effects happening and other creepy stuff. Like, I understand that the end of the event kind of got compressed. But last year they raised a village. The village was on fire. We had to go down to the village and stop them. And then a guy walked out with half of his daughter in his hand and dropped her on the ground in front of us. Like stuff like that we didn't get to experience this year. Like I said, not a bad event, but it wasn't like the nightmare that it was for us prior. It didn't have that same feel to it.
I think, like at the end of the day, they can't all be winners. And I think having concrete feedback to work on just gives them the opportunity to do, to do better next year and to improve on the areas that need to be improved on, and also just keep doing the things that work well too. So hopefully, next year, maybe a special year at Midsummer Nightmare. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But I think, I'm always glad to hear about this event because to me, it really showcases that you don't need to have a lot of players to do like a really cool game. It's a lot more about game design and thought process and all that. And so I'm always super grateful to hear a to hear a bit of an after action from you, where where we talk about the good stuff and sometimes the stuff that needs to be done. So, Jordan, thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. And like I said, this is our favorite event, right? Like this is the
Hmm.
event that we all try to come out to all the time. This is like airsoft for us. This is like
Yeah.
peak airsoft. So, I hope that next year, wherever the event is, because might be a little iffy on being at Liberty Canyon again, but wherever it is, I hope that we can figure out just logistically a way to have more interaction. Because we the bones of the event were there, just felt like there was some stuff that I wish would have happened. And
Yeah.
it was still a great time being out with the boys. Like, Gordon put on another great event. Like, we all were thankful. We had a great time. And even the guys I talked to that talked so highly of Midsummer last year being like, wow, that was amazing, they didn't say that this event was bad.
Hmm.
We all
Yeah, for
came to
sure.
the same kind of conclusion of like, we just wish that there was more interaction with us and we had a little bit more stuff to do, and not because we were bored of pulling security, but because security didn't feel like security this year.
Definitely.
We were kind of just chilling. Most of the time it was a weekend with the boys. We were just on vacation in Jamaica, Vermont. It's just
Yeah.
we were just hanging out. But yeah, I had a ton of fun. Thanks for having me on, Phil.
Yeah.
I great time. It's always nice to like kind of relive this in my head. It just happened. And I'm glad that we got to talk about it soon so that I didn't forget anything
Yeah,
that
and
happened during this.
hopefully next year, regardless of where it's held or who decides to go, it's gonna be a good experience. But thank you so much for being on, Jordan. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And this is all we've got for you this week. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.